Hi everyone, Rachel Johnson here, broker owner of Lunar Realty Belize on the beautiful island of Ambergris Key here in Belize. In this series, we have our In the Inbox questions. That's when we answer questions that have been asked by folks like you. We are on question number 20 today. So if you're just getting started with this series, be sure to backtrack, listen to the questions beforehand. There's a ton of great information that is being shared with you. So with that, we're going to jump in and answer the question here from Derek. And he asks, I'm a US citizen. Can you give me some information on getting a mortgage in Belize for foreigners? Is it possible, and what typical mortgage rates are there for foreigners? And what typically are the interest rates there for foreigners? So this is a really great question, one that gets asked a lot. Derek, thank you for asking this to me recently because it was a good reminder to bring this up in our In the Inbox series. And I'm going to make sure that this answer is general enough for everybody who is a foreigner, meaning you're not a Belizean, when it comes to financing properties here in the country. So I think typically, because many of us have grown up knowing that you can do and buy a property with 20% down, 80% financing. I know over COVID, interest rates were really, really low, that 2-3%. So a lot of people were refining. If you're a real estate investor, all the time we hear about leverage, leverage, leverage. Well, now as interest rates go up, it is of course harder to find those good deals out there. But I do want to say in Belize, it's actually even a little bit harder to find financing for foreigners. I'm going to start with a couple of tidbits here, and then I'm going to jump into a couple of solutions, because there are some solutions, even though it's not as easy to find, or it's not necessarily that 20% down, there are some solutions for you. So first and foremost, I am going to mention that real estate in Belize is typically priced in US dollars, unless otherwise noted. Sometimes it is in Belize dollars. Typically, you'll see it noted in Belize dollars if it's typically a Belizean to Belizean transaction, but otherwise on listing websites, you can expect that it is in US dollar. In addition to that, most transactions are done in cash. And I know for a lot of people, this may be a surprise because we are so used to financing, but typically when people are buying real estate here in Belize, they come with a bucket of cash, not literally, but they're not planning on financing because it is very difficult for foreigners to get financing. Now, one of the solutions is that sellers will offer financing, but it's only about 10 to 15% of sellers. So just something for you to bear in mind. I know for a lot of folks here, they did actually like the stability of knowing that things here were purchased in cash, from 2008 to 2012, when there was one of the worst recessions in the United States history, and all these foreclosures and banks that were really unstable and going out of business. Here, the market wasn't really affected because the transactions here were done in cash. Properties were owned in cash. And a lot of the people who are buying here, this was their primary home or a second, third, fourth, fifth home for them. They already had it paid off. They just had minimal property taxes. So we never really had that market where there was this huge number of foreclosures and properties that people had to get rid of quickly. Now, in Belize, there are two types of banks. There is a domestic or a local bank, and then there's an international bank. The domestic and local banks will not loan to foreigners. They will absolutely not loan to foreigners. You do need to be a Belizean resident or a Belizean citizen in order to get financing with them. I know financing with them is quite expensive, actually, when based on a lot of my friends who've been working with banks to try to get financing. Anywhere from 8 to 25% interest is what they're charging. So not exactly super lucrative. If you are even a resident here, it does get a little bit of expensive to finance. Now, there are two international banks that have offered financing services for foreigners before. I know there are a few more loopholes that you need to get through. One of them is opening up a bank account with that bank. So it's a lot of documentation you need to provide. There's typically additional fees, such as loan origination fees, monthly fees to keep that bank account open. And they typically will only finance 50%. So that means you still need to come up with that other 50%. Interest rates tend to be north of 12%. So just letting you know that there is an option if you really need to have an international bank, but it does tend to get expensive as well. And it does get to be a little tedious. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention with international banks is they'll typically tend to only loan on properties that are complete. So no pre-construction and then no empty land. But I'm going to dig into a few more viable options with you. These are three of the most popular that I've seen my clients participating in. And well, first and foremost is that you can prepare to pay in cash. And I do want to mention that if you are doing that, make sure you're allocating an additional 10% for closing costs. This is something that we've talked about in our series here. is closing costs are not included in the purchase price. So you do want to make sure that you have that extra cash set aside so that you can do the title transfer fees. And it is about 10% that I recommend, even a little bit more than that, just to have extra for closing. Option number two, and this is really the most popular here, is that find a property with seller or developer financing. Typically rates, this is not standard across the board, but this is just typical rates are 50% down, 8% interest, and it's a 3 to 5 year balloon or 3 to 5 year term. And depending on your seller, you may be able to amortize it for a longer amount of time. And then you'll have smaller monthly payments, but then still have that balloon payment at the end. But do just note that this is standard here. This is not applied to every single transaction. Some sellers are a lot more flexible. I know we have some properties that is offering 30-year financing, also some who's doing 60% financing. So there can be some flexibility, but that's why it's really important for you to talk to your realtor and let them know that you are going to need financing so that they can find the options out there. Because there are only about 10 to 15% of the sellers who are willing to entertain financing. It's really important for your realtor to know that from the get-go so that they're looking at properties that will be able to accept seller financing. This tends to be the most direct route. There are no loan origination fees. Typically, there's no early prepayment penalties if you decide that you want to pay the loan off early. So this tends to be the most popular way for people to do transactions when it comes to financing. All of the paperwork is recorded with the lands department. So that's a clean, safe transaction as well. Option number three, and this was the most popular for a handful of my clients over COVID, but that's when interest rates are a little bit better. You can either get a line of credit from your home bank or refinance your current home and then use that as a cash transaction down here in Belize. So it is possible. I know interest rates probably aren't as high in many places as they are here in Belize. So you may be able to even get some better interest rates there. But if you typically go to your bank, let's say Citibank, for example, I've been banking with Citibank for 20 something years. And if I walk in and say, I need a loan for a property in Belize, they're going to be like, absolutely not. They have no jurisdiction in Belize. There is no reason for them to give you a loan for a property in Belize. However, if I had a property in the States, I wanted to refinance that or get a line of credit for something, then I could work with that bank that I have there in the States or in my home country. So there are certain ways to get creative, but again, just communicate with your realtor what your expectations are. And last but not least, if you are new to the real estate industry here, please make sure you're reaching out to us for the 12 must-know facts before you buy real estate in Belize. It's really important that you do your due diligence. Please do not get margarita madness when you come down here and just buy the first thing that you see. It is important for you to do your homework. We at Luna Realty are here to help provide resources to you. We've been here for over a decade at this point and are really geared towards making sure that you have the information you need to be an educated buyer. Feel free to reach out to us. My name is Rachel Jensen. You can email me there, info@lunarealtybelize.com, info@lunarealtybelize.com, or that's my phone number. Feel free to give me a ring. Thanks, everyone, and we hope to see you here in Belize. Bye-bye.